my mom was like, why don't you look into this like program, which was the nutrition program that I ended up doing. It was just like a really nice mix of both like aspects. And once I, started implementing what I was learning, did the program, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I had played with the idea of like eventually wanting to help others, but I was like, I can't go and be like, hey, I'm gonna help you with your health when like I'm covered in acne and I don't feel good. Like, I wouldn't feel confident.
It's like a fat
that.
personal trainer or something.
Yeah, I'm not qualified for that, and I'm perfectly okay saying that. Yeah. So I was like, what do I want to do? Like, what matters to me? And I always wanted to be a sex therapist. Like growing up, I was like, that's what I want to do.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 124 of the Andrew Deitsch podcast. If this is your first time joining me, I want to thank you for checking it out. The show is all about having meaningful in-person conversations with some of the most amazing people that I know. But before I jump into the show, I just want to mention that this episode of the podcast has been brought to you by Eyes Ahead Media. Now, Eyes Ahead is a group of creative professionals who understand the value of exposure. And in today's social media landscape, eyeballs are the new currency. And the more attention you have, the bigger impact you can make. Over the last 8 months, Eyes Ahead has been perfecting their custom gifts, and they've helped over 30 brands get their gifts trending on all the major platforms. They've created more than 500 gifts that have been used by the biggest celebrities and influencers around the world, and they've been viewed over 750 million times. With their proven system, they consistently get their clients millions of views within the first few weeks. The numbers don't lie. So if you're interested in having your face or your brand seen by millions of people around the world, visit eyesaheadmedia.com/gif for more details. All right, so my guest today is holistic health practitioner Calee Shea. Now, Calee specializes in women's hormones and sexuality, and I stumbled upon her page a few months ago, and I just loved her honest and open approach on sex education and dispelling a lot of the myths out there. And during this episode, we talked about hormones, sex, dating in the modern world, and I was able to ask her a lot of questions that I've been wanting to know the answers to. Now, this was an awesome episode, so please, without any further ado, welcome my friend, Calee Shea. Calee Shea, what's up?
Hey, thanks for having me.
You're welcome for having you. Okay, so I followed you maybe a few months ago. Okay. And I don't remember how. I think it might have been, it's just like you see like mutual friends and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I think it might have been Laura Esposito that follows you.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's how I saw your page. Maybe she reposted one of your things or something. But anyways, I followed you, and then I've just been following you for the past couple months. And even as a dude, I always get something out of your content.
Cool.
So,
good.
Just know you probably have a secret audience of guys out there, or maybe they're not so secret.
I get some messages every once in a while, hey, thanks so much because now I know more about my girlfriend, or now I know more about my fiance. And I really love that. I appreciate the guys that follow me too, because I think it's such an undereducated topic that it's good for guys to know too.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, I always appreciate that when it's girls coaching other girls, because I'm like, oh, that's
this is my inside scoop.
I see. Very clever. Very cool. Well, just let's go back for a little bit, because I'm sure growing up you probably had all the same kinds of questions and insecurities that everyone has about their body and sexuality and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So how did you get from a young girl to where you are now doing what you're doing?
So actually my household was pretty open. My mom was very open. My dad was not, but my mom was open about everything.
Huh.
So when I was growing up, she was getting her PhD in natural medicine. And we were really close. So everything she did, I did. She was studying veganism, so I was like, I'll be vegan. I'm 11 years old, trying to figure out what being vegan is like. So I was always exposed to a lot of stuff. And she did a lot of the woo-woo. She was doing yoga before that was really mainstream and that kind of stuff. So
crystals and shit.
Yeah, all of it. I have my crystals in my bag with me just in case. So I was exposed to a lot of stuff early on, and one of those topics is that she was really open about our bodies and what was going on, and I just asked her any question that popped into my head. And so I have an issue with public school sex education. It drives me nuts because I remember I look back on my public school years and sex education class, and I'm what? Did I learn anything?
Mm-hmm.
We looked at a couple of pictures of STDs and then moved on. That was the class.
Literally, yeah.
So I grew up with it being very open and that sort of thing. And then definitely somewhere around high school, my own insecurities and my lack of knowledge about this as a whole, my whole system, made zero sense to me still. And then I definitely remember it being an open conversation with my friends, and I definitely talked more about my body and what was going on than they did. So I would encourage that conversation more. But I think there were still like questions and
like around like puberty kind of age. Gotcha.
For sure. I was like, it was still like an insecurity, even though like my mom and I talked about stuff. I remember being like, when I got my period, I was like, I'm not gonna tell anyone about this.
Right.
Like, this is weird.
But everyone's going through it like silently.
Right. And that's like kind of how I ended up here after like my own slew of like health issues and how I got into health coaching. I ended up like in this area because I was like, this is where we lack like education about our health, but like also education about our bodies and what they're supposed to be doing.
So when you were growing up with your mom, you said what was she pursuing again?
PhD in natural medicine.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And what does your dad do?
So he is an entrepreneur.
Very cool. So you've got like both sides.
Yep.
Do you have siblings?
I do. I have 2 older brothers.
Nice.
Yeah. But I definitely took this on. My middle brother is like a genius, really. And he like is obsessed with health stuff and can read something and just like regurgitate it. And my mom is like sitting back like laughing like ha ha ha. Both my kids are doing the health thing.
That's
like,
amazing.
Yeah, it's funny.
No, that's really cool actually. My mom's always been like super into health stuff too. But instead of like the woo-woo type stuff, she was always like super religious. So it was just like church and all that kind of stuff. So like I was actually talking with my friend Nicole this morning because I was telling her, she's like, oh, what podcast are you doing? So we started talking about it. And I was telling her like how I went to a private middle school and our sex ed class was like just basically pure abstinence class. It was literally just like, don't have sex.
Which doesn't work.
Doesn't work at all. Any type of prohibition doesn't work at all. If you tell someone not to do something, the only thing they want to do it.
Especially sex.
It's literally like a Bible lesson. Like it's like don't eat from the tree of good and evil, and then what do they fucking do? They go and eat from the tree. So it's like literally it doesn't make sense when you're saying like it's human nature to just do the thing they tell you not to do, but then you're just right there. You're like just don't do it.
Right.
And it always just seemed weird. Like it should be education, and then you get to form your own opinion rather than like just straight up like nope, not going to do it.
Right.
And it's all honestly kind of like damaging too, because not only are you not getting education about how to have like safe sex and stuff like that, but you're also like not even brainwashing, but just like adding negative thoughts towards all. Yeah, exactly. It creates shame and like negative thoughts around all that kind of stuff. So then the first time you have any type of encounters like that, you're like, I don't know what's going on. Like you're like,
am I supposed to be doing this?
Like I'm sinning, fuck. Like and then you're like thinking about that versus like the whole experience, like it just turns out bad.
Yeah, and I mean the greatest pleasures in life are food and sex. And like why do you want to create shame around those 2 things?
That's true though, but our society has created a lot of shame around both of those things.
Yeah, between diet culture and like sex shaming.
Very interesting. Okay, let's get back to your upbringing though. So like in like high school and stuff like that, you're talking about it with your friends and all that. And then you went after high school, were you kind of like the go-to person? Like were people like always asking you questions like,
Definitely.
Hey, this just happened, do you know?
Definitely. And then I think as I started to get more into like after I graduated high school, I started to get more into like health stuff because of my own health issues. And
what were you dealing with?
So this is kind of like where all of it kind of marries well. When I was graduating high school, I was like, I'm gonna go on birth control because like I'm going off to college. I was going to Texas, so like I'm gonna be 14 hours away. I definitely wanna have this figured out before I leave home. So I get on birth control. I've always had a sensitive system. This just blew everything up. I mean, like my hair was falling out. I had acne, just like literally no skin. It was just acne.
Wow.
And I was having like terrible like mood and depression issues, and it just like affected everything. And so I became like, I would say like obsessed at first with like figuring out what was like the problem. So I came off the birth control and it was like it just wrecked everything. So
Totally.
I became like very obsessed with like the nutrition and the gut health and learning a lot about that. And then the piece that I think I was missing was understanding hormones and how that plays a role. And because, like birth control affects your natural hormones.
Totally.
So I guess that like short time period that I was on it just really affected it in my body. And I think every person, it affects it a little bit differently. But for me, it was pretty big deal. So I ended up having to like heal my own body and trying to figure it out on my own. I didn't feel like any of my doctors were giving me answers. Even my mom was like, I'm at like a wit's end. Like I have no clue what's going on with you. You're the only person that can figure that out. And some of it for me was like a mental block more than anything else. Like understanding that the diet changes and like the lifestyle changes, like I had to be okay with that. So a lot of it was mental and like getting over that emotional hump. But that's kind of how I ended up in like the health and wellness stuff, is because I had to heal myself, and then I got to the end of it and I was like, oh my God, I'm not the only girl who goes through this.
Yeah.
And then that kind of opened up like a lot of other doors in terms of like sex and period health and that kind of thing. Like we all go through it very silently.
Yeah, it makes sense why you go through it silently too, because especially when you're dealing with problems with your own body, it's like almost admitting that there's something wrong with you or something like inherently you don't really want to like share that.
Well, and some of like the hormone imbalance symptoms and like even like sexual symptoms, like sexual stuff that goes on, those are like embarrassing things to talk about.
Yeah, you're like, my vagina smells weird.
Right,
like I don't really want to talk about that.
I have BO, like, and you know, your testosterone might be high, but like you have BO, and so it's like that's an awkward thing to talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
So, you know, there's a lot of like is this okay to talk about? Like, is this cool to bring up? So, you know,
were you always like pretty confident, like talking about, like you said, your mom was really open. So like, but you also said that you got on the pill right when you were going to college. Did that like fuck with your whole confidence? Like, you know, having all this acne and all that stuff?
It was horrible.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It was like a good 3 years of like dealing with the acne and like trying to reverse what that had done. So the general rule is that for every month you're on hormonal birth control, it takes a year for your body to recover from it.
Wow.
Yeah, and so like girls are like, I've been on it for 20 years. That just like blows my mind. So
it's like, see you when you're 60.
Like it's crazy to me, like the like how much it just messes everything up.
Literally.
So it honestly took, I would say like right at like I was on it for like 3.5 months, and like right at the 3.5 year mark, it was like everything got better.
Wow.
Which was crazy to me to like see that happen.
So do you think it was just from that one, well, probably a combination of everything. Like it's not always just one single thing, but the main kickoff was the birth control, and that's what just fucked up everything.
I think that it's what it did for me. I don't know that that's what it does for like every other person. The science behind it is that like it's not good in anyone's body for the most part.
Wow.
I think the general rule is that like if someone has like a debilitating illness, like for example, if they have debilitating endometriosis, like it's probably going to be better for them to have like hormone therapy. That makes sense. But for like the average woman from a health standpoint, it's not supposed to work in our systems.
Yeah. I listened to a podcast recently with the guys from Mind Pump. Actually, we were talking about them earlier, and they did an interview episode with, I think her name was Dr. Jolene something.
Jolene Brighton.
Yeah, and she wrote a book. I think it's called Beyond the Pill. Yeah, and that episode was like very fascinating to me because it's really interesting what kind of effects that birth control can have on your body. Like it's really fascinating. Also, I listened to a podcast with Dr. Rhonda Patrick. I don't know if you've heard of her before.
I don't think so.
She has an awesome podcast too. It's called Found My Fit. But she was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and she was talking about a study that basically they had 2 sets of women, one of them that was on birth control, one that wasn't. And one of the interesting things was they were trying to see if birth control like affected how you like pick mates and stuff like that, like picking your partners. And they would like smell an article of this guy's clothing, and they could like the girls that were on birth control, it was a 50-50 split where they smelled the clothing and they said they were attracted to them, and then they were actually attracted to this guy in real life.
Yeah.
Versus the girls that were off birth control, they would smell this guy's clothes, and then they're in like a lineup, they would choose who they were like attracted to or whatever, and it was like almost like dead accurate, which is kind of like, it's kind of like superpower. It's like, what the fuck? Like I didn't know girls could like figure that out just by like your smell.
Right. Well, like it changes our hormones too. So like what we need and like sexually is going to change depending on like where our hormone levels are at, which is crazy if you think about it.
It is really crazy. And it's one of those things too where it's like you don't have like a rule book or like a guidebook or something. Like when you get a car, you know, you have the like, you know,
you have a manual.
You have a manual,
yeah.
You don't get one of those. So it's like with like hormones in particular and gut health and stuff like that, you don't even really have, it's so invisible to us that if we didn't have science to back any of these things up, we would have no idea what the fuck is happening.
Right.
You'd just be like, oh, you're just like sick. You just have like a disease or something, I guess. Like, I guess you're screwed or whatever. But it is like, it's awesome that people like you and other people are advocating for a lot of this stuff because people are finally understanding how it kind of sort of works. You know, a lot of people are figuring it out.
And that's why I talk to a lot of my clients about this, because I get a lot of clients with acne because that was, you know, part of my story. And I'm like, it's a big deal to you because it's like on your face.
Totally.
But that's not the only organ that's like freaking out right now. So like if you saw your liver and you're like, wow, my liver doesn't look right, you wouldn't immediately be like, why isn't my liver better? Like I'm giving it medicine, why isn't it better? You would give it time, but you can't see it and like scale the like changes. We can see our skin and scale those. So that's like a huge issue because it has to start showing up on the outside. And I think that's like a way that our body like lets us know something's going on. And because it's like in our face, literally, and we see it every day, that's how like it points itself out to us. So it's, I think learning to listen to our bodies is like a huge thing that we lack the knowledge of, like as a general population.
Yeah, and I remember in one of your videos you were talking about, you know, you have one issue, but really the solution isn't necessarily to just like take a pill or whatever. There's probably something else going on with all kinds of other stuff, and adding another thing to this concoction is probably not going to be as helpful as maybe removing something or whatever.
Yeah, so like it's really important to get to the root issue of whatever's happening. So many things are symptoms that we look at as diseases. So like acne is like, oh my God, I have acne. Like, you don't have acne. What's causing the acne? So you have to dig deep and figure out like what is going on at like the core level, because like some organ, some system isn't functioning correctly, and this is a symptom that you have. It's not the disease.
Interesting. Okay, so you went to college, you dealt with all this stuff. That was like throughout college you were pretty much dealing with it?
So I came home, actually, my first year I came home, because you asked about like mental health and all that.
Yeah.
Just plummeted. It was in the shitter. So I came home and I was like, I can't do this. You know, I was in a pretty like emotionally exhausting relationship at the time. And I think that was like both parties. Like I was not in a good place health-wise, and I don't think he was either. And like that didn't help. And I'm 14 hours away from home.
Yeah.
So I came home, kind of got my shit together, and I was like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I went to school originally I was going to go into politics. That's not what I'm going to go into. So that's what, like, I was like.
What made you think you were going to do that?
Family is in politics, and so like I was like, I could do that. Like I could be a lobbyist or something. So I was economics and political science. No, not me. So I came home, and my mom was like, why don't you look into this like program, which was the nutrition program that I ended up doing. And she's like, why don't you just look into this, like take a semester off, like go through this program, see what you think. Like maybe this will help you heal yourself. And it's still education. And again, my mom's like out of the blocks thinker. She's not like, you have to go to college right now. So I signed up for it and just like started working through the modules. And it's all like a bunch of video content and that sort of thing. And
what was the course? Just so people were curious.
Yeah, Institute for Integrative Nutrition. It's great. I love it.
And it's all online? You can take it anywhere? Cool.
Yeah. So it's a year long, but
this episode is sponsored by. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, for real. That'd be great. Call me. So I started doing that and like implementing what I was learning, and they go over like hundreds of like dietary theories and like things like that, and you get like a lot of the science, like Dr. Oz is on there and like things like that, but then like you also get like some of the woo-woo people, so it's like a really good, and I say that lovingly, like I'm a woo-woo person.
It's funny how woo-woo became a real term for like, all that stuff.
It's like, the best,
it became, like I feel like woo-woo was originally like, he's into that woo-woo shit, but now it's like people embrace it, they're like, yeah, I'm really into the woo-woo
really
stuff.
Woo-woo, like.
I'm so woo-woo, like it's so funny.
But you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I totally, like you're like into crystals and yoga and astrology and fucking source and all kinds of shit.
All of it. So
I was actually, so at the end of every episode, I record like an outro where I recommend other episodes, and I already had picked out the episodes I was going to recommend. And one of them, I was like, yeah, I'm going to recommend this woo-woo lady. Like I had this lady who was like, she's really interesting. Her name's Jessica Valor. And she, like her, anyways, listen to it. It was good. Episode 78, I think. But anyways,
cool.
I already chose it because I was like, I have a feeling.
You know the connect. Yeah, definitely into that woo-woo shit. So yeah, it was just like a really nice mix of both like aspects. And once I, started implementing what I was learning, like I said, I had to get past that emotional hump first of like, I have to be, like what I really thought at the time was like, I have to be on a diet, or I have to be like, and that's like scary. That like, part of that like shame mentality around food and that sort of thing, I was like, what do you mean I never get to eat gluten again? Like, I'm gonna eat all of it, actually. As a matter of fact, like I'm gonna go eat all the gluten right now. So I had to get past that mental aspect of like what I could and couldn't do like with my body. Yeah.
Interesting. So you took this program, and then what happened after that?
Did the program. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So started going to school in Kennesaw and just getting some classes in. Kept like doing some like educational stuff, continuing ed of the like nutrition and all that. And I would say it like was slow. Like part of it was I had to grow up a little bit, and I had to get comfortable with like that I had like healed my system. So I had played with the idea of like eventually wanting to help others. But I was like, I can't go and be like, hey, I'm gonna help you with your health when like I'm covered in acne and I don't feel good. Like I wouldn't feel confident.
It's like a fat personal trainer or something.
Yeah, like I wouldn't feel confident with that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I had to like kind of like give myself some time to like grow up and like learn more about like my body and apply some things I had learned. I definitely like, I joke that like I treat my body like a science experiment, but I do a lot of the time in a good way. Yeah. But like I'm always like, let me try this supplement or let me see how this diet works. Like I want to know how it feels in me before I recommend it to someone else.
That's good.
So eventually I like went down this path of like health coaching, and originally it was like only nutrition based, and I really didn't love that. I didn't want to get into like the weight loss stuff. That's just like not my passion. And a lot of that I think goes back to like there's some emotional stuff there when people want to lose weight.
100%.
Yeah, and like I'm not qualified for that, and I'm perfectly okay saying that. Yeah. So I was like, what do I want to do? Like what matters to me? And I'd always wanted to be a sex therapist. Like growing up, I was like, that's what I want to do. And it never like, it was like one of those like, I don't know, like a pipe dream. I was like, oh, I'll be a sex therapist one day maybe.
Yeah, it sounds like a fake job.
Yeah, exactly. But like maybe that's what I'll do. I'll be a relationship therapist, something like that.
Sounds like someone, like I remember when I was younger, I was like, I want to build Legos for a living.
Yeah,
like, you know, exactly. It sounds like one of those things. Right. But there are people that are like professional Lego guys that like make all the giant displays and shit.
Right, but so I was like, yeah, in the back of my mind, like at the end of the day, maybe I'll be a sex therapist. So it's kind of what I'm doing.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome how it all came full circle.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was gonna say I totally agree with like the weight loss type stuff, how it's typically attached to a lot of other things. It's not just the weight loss. Like my friend Ashlyn, she's a online coach, and her program's called Love Your Body Academy. I think she was on 2 episodes, but I think the last one was episode 110. And she, that's like one of the big things is like, it's not just about weight loss, it's about like loving your body. Cause also what happens when you actually lose the weight?
Right.
Like what then? Or just done, okay, bye, your life is fixed forever.
Totally.
Like it's not really just a, you know, okay, take this thing and now you're done. It's a journey and like it's not really ever ending. So you got to like learn how to live with yourself and everything.
Right. And like your body, that's what I tell a lot of my clients, like your body's always going to change. So like the tools we learn now for like how to eat or like how to take care of ourselves, like that's going to shift and change.
Totally.
You just have to have like a good foundation of like caring about your body enough to do the work.
Yeah.
And that's going to change as your body changes.
Yeah. So you're like a holistic coach too. Like you're pretty much, you're not just, like you said before, you were kind of in this nutrition niche, but now it's more like sex and nutrition and lifestyle and like all kinds of stuff. Like what exactly is it that you're coaching?
Yeah. So basically what I do is like specialize in like women's hormones and sexuality. What's involved in that is like the nutrition, the lifestyle, like the working out, making sure you're like sleeping enough, like those things matter. But like as a whole, I guess like my umbrella is hormone health. Because I even feel like sex falls underneath that, like low libido or like whether you can like stay lubricated enough during sex, like things like that. That like all falls under hormone health. So I would say I'm like a hormone coach.
Yeah.
But I think all of it like from a holistic perspective applies.
Yeah. It's funny because when I was younger, my mom was in an MLM company, and I remember they had like some sort of like hormone like cream or something like that. And I always remembered like, what is that? Like I never understood it. And my mom would always try to like kind of explain it to me. But it was always like, whenever I heard her talking about it with people, I was like, I don't understand like this at all. So like for people that are just completely dummies about like hormones and all that stuff, give us a crash course on hormones and like all that kind of stuff.
Oh man, okay. So essentially, like, from what perspective? Like as like women's hormones.
Women's hormones is like what you're dealing with, but even for the guys out there that like literally have no clue what we're talking about right now.
Okay, so women's hormones and male hormones are very different. So from women's hormones, which is what I work with. Essentially, we go through 4 different cycles throughout the month. So we don't just have our period, which is like what is kind of like taught, like we just have our period. We actually go through 4 different cycles. So during that time, our estrogen, progesterone mostly are like up and down and all around. So estrogen is like your female hormone, and that's the stuff that like causes PMS, like an overload of estrogen.
Is that what's when you're taking birth control? Sorry, is it blocking that?
So it depends on which kind of birth control you take. Some birth controls have just a form of progesterone, like a synthetic progesterone. Some of them have estrogen or a synthetic estrogen. Some of them have like both. So it just depends on which form you take.
Okay, sorry, continue.
That's okay. So progesterone is like your chill hormone. Like that's like what's gonna keep you calm. I call it like the weed of hormones. Like it's gonna keep you calm. It keeps like your metabolism in a good place. Like you feel good all the time. And those should be in like a good ratio most of the time. But when, for example, like we get PMS symptoms like a week before our period, it's when like our progesterone and our estrogen are out of balance. So what I do is like I work to keep like hormones in balance all the time. So ideally, like your period should be symptomless. Like you shouldn't have cramps, maybe a little tired. Like it is internal surgery. But you should be a little tired and like sluggish. But outside of that, like cravings, acne, cramps, like that's really should be non-existent if your hormones are in a good place. Which when I tell people that, it's like either they get mad or their minds are blown. They're like, yeah, that's not true. Like I'm in denial about that.
They're like, well, you don't know my body. My periods are painful
oh my God,
as shit.
I hear that all the time. Or like, I just have to have birth control. Honey, no, you don't. So, that like...
But people have been kind of conditioned and told that, so like, why would they believe you versus something else that they've heard?
Totally, because it's like very easy to hand out like a birth control prescription and say like, this is what's gonna fix it.
Because also there's money behind it.
Yeah. Conspiracy theory for another day. Like.
No, one of my, again, Mind Pump, Adam, he just shaved his head, and one of the things was he didn't shave his head for a long time because he was losing his hair because he had, I think it's psoriasis or something like that, which causes you to get like all these weird like things on your head and stuff. And what he realized was he started getting symptoms of it when he started being a personal trainer. He's working inside all the time under fake lights. He wasn't getting enough vitamin D, all this stuff, and he'd been going to a dermatologist for years and years and years. They'd been giving him all this medicine, but it never really helped.
Put cream on it.
It was like he was getting like steroid shots, and that would work for a little while, but like it would wear off, and you just have to keep getting steroids, and it works almost like immediately with the steroids. But he started doing this like red light therapy, which like gives you vitamin D and stuff because it's like UV whatever, and it all cleared up in like a month or two or something crazy. And it's like no one ever at the dermatologist ever told him that because like there's no money behind that. Like hey, go in the sun more.
Right, yeah.
How do they keep consistent clients? Oh, well, you need this steroid shot, and you're going to probably need it every month or whatever.
Right, I saw a picture on Facebook that was like a cartoon or whatever, like, and it was basically just like doctor school. And this isn't like shitting on doctors. Like, if I have a bullet wound, take me to the hospital right now. Like, don't take me to some woo-woo crystal shit. Like, take me to the hospital.
Take me to a Reiki healer right now.
Yeah, no thank you. Take me to the hospital. But I just saw like, it was like a whiteboard, like doctor school, and it was like, if they get better, they won't come back. And I was like, that's so true. Like, we're not taught to get better. We're just taught to, like, continue taking medication and just maintaining.
Yeah. Again, it's, like, not to be, like, so conspiracy, but it's, like, kind of true. It's, like, if you are actually in it for the right reasons, you're going to be out of business pretty quick, because it's, like, even though there's always going to be sick people, kind of, it's, like, we can't make there's no way that doctors aren't ever going to be not necessary because everyone's just so healthy or something.
Right.
But it's like, if you're making a lot of money off of prescription medications, and it's a big business. But anyways, so like you were saying though, so these girls have been told pretty much their whole life that they need birth control all the time. What do you tell them to? How do you get them off that? How do you get them like off of that mindset, and how do you reshift what they're thinking?
Yeah, so I think part of it's just like through education. Is like we are uneducated like as a whole about like I said, like our bodies. So part of it's like educating. I never recommend that anyone come off birth control. Like again, I'm not qualified to like tell you whether you should or shouldn't be. And I think that's something like if you have a debilitating illness or something like that, like that's something you'd figure out with your doctor. But I do get a lot of girls that come to me and they're like, okay, I'm ready to come off. Like I've looked at the pros and cons. Like I want to understand my body more, or like I want to get pregnant eventually, whatever their reasoning is. And so it's like a whole detox process because the point of birth control is to turn off your body's natural production of hormones. And it does its job very well. Like it goes in the system, it turns it off and replaces it with a synthetic version. Well, then your body's like, I don't need this. Like I'm getting it elsewhere. I don't have to make it. So it's like, you have to like train the brain to like kick back on basically. So it's a combination of like detoxing the old hormones, because if they're still in there, your body's still gonna think, like if your liver's holding on to the hormones, your body's gonna think, I don't have to make any, they're still in the system, like we don't have to do that. So helping the liver detox and get all that out, which lots of things can make your liver sluggish, and so many things with like our lifestyle in general, like overconsumption of alcohol and sugar and inflammation in the body in general, can make it really hard for your liver to detox as it should. So, and 50% of women tend to have a gene called MTHFR, which is like a liver mutation gene. And the majority of the the people that it affects are women. There we go. So it can be hard for women to detox hormones. So that combined, I kind of help them like detox it out of their systems and then figuring out like what their body's like without it, because a lot of these girls have been on it for years and years and years, and it's like I don't know what normal feels like anymore.
And not only that, but they're probably their parents might be even encouraging it or different things, or again, like the doctor encourages it. So who are you as a parent to be like, well, doctor said this, but I've read some books and like, you know what I mean? Like
I read a study once.
Yeah, I read the study. Let's do a podcast once, and I think we should just go rub some crystals on it. Like, you know, like you're like, you know, that doesn't sound right. So you're like, yeah, we should listen to the doctor.
For sure.
When you're, you know, you talked about how like sex ed in schools and stuff like that is something that you have a big problem with. If you, and I really liked your video that you did. It was like the first sex ed video on your YouTube channel about jizz.
Yes.
I like how you called it jizz too. Like not like
There's
semen
a reason for that.
or whatever. I love it because you're like you're talking about it in the terms that people know it as. You're like, you're gonna, when you've got jizz in your pussy and you're like, like literally, and people are like, oh yeah, I know exactly what she's talking about.
I relate
like,
to that.
When there's semen in your, on your vulva, like, you know, like
no
people are like, what? Like you're talking like a doctor.
You have to relate, like, make it relatable.
Yeah, I love that. But anyways, so in your, I love that you're doing that series. I think you should definitely continue it. But if you were in charge of like sex ed in schools and stuff like that, especially for girls and educating them from a young age, and let's say you were offering an alternative to birth control or whatever, because I mean, some people are on it for like, you know, they think they need it because of medicinal reasons, but some people are just straight up like, I'm trying to have sex, not have a baby. Like, so what would you be saying to these people?
So actually in France, they do their sex ed course is called The Art of Making Love. Which, that kind of like makes you a little like queasy. I feel like when I hear that, I'm like, I don't like that either. But
the art of it's so French too, like the art of making love.
They cover like every topic and like all spectrums of sexuality and that kind of thing. So I think looking at like other places that maybe do a better job of that would be like first steps. But also like combining.
Europeans got it figured out.
Yeah, some things they just got it down.
Been doing it for years.
So I think that, but also like combining like men and women or like girls and boys in classes. And, you know, I remember like being separated and like we'd have a waiver and like things were separated. And I didn't like learn about what's going on for boys during puberty and like they didn't learn what's going on for me. Like how helpful would that have been as like a young kid to know like, hey, she's not a bitch. She's just in a bad mood because her period's like something like that. Like that would be so helpful.
Yeah, I remember my parents made me watch a video with them that like explained both sides, and they got it from their friend or something, and their kids watched it too. And the son and the daughter, like they watched it together or whatever. And the son was like, they're like, do you have any questions? And he was like, okay, I just have one question. When do I start bleeding? Like he was totally didn't get it. Like,
just went over his head.
Yeah. He was like, wait, when do I start bleeding? Like it was so funny. And she's like, you don't have to worry about that one. You lucked out on that one.
You're
good. Yeah. She has to worry about it, but not you. But yeah, I remember that. But yeah, you're right. Like in school, I remember splitting it up. Yeah. I think in a way it's good to split it up for certain things because like, I remember sex ed for me, it was like ridiculous how like goofy, because all the boys are like embarrassed, right?
Right.
You're all kind of embarrassed and guys are trying to act up and impress everybody and be like, ooh. Like I remember in my sex ed class, it was at private school, it was abstinence class, and there was like a bin, you could like drop a question in, and then like the next class, like the teacher would answer all the questions, so you could ask them anonymously, so you wouldn't be embarrassed or whatever. And like half the questions were like, would you rather have sex on a beach or like on a trampoline or skydiving or like something stupid like that, and the teacher's just like, like what the fuck, like
but like I think about from the standpoint of like if we did do that together, would we be so embarrassed about it?
I think it would be good to have some separate and then a lot together, because I think like some separate things, like I think a lot of girls would probably not ask the questions knowing that there's guys in the room because they're embarrassed of their bodies or whatever to ask certain things if they were together, and even guys too, like it's already like an uncomfortable thing. And like, you know, what if there's like that boy in your class that you like and you're like asking questions about your period and stuff, you're like, he's gonna think I'm a monster, like, you know. So like I can understand why they would want to separate things, but I do think that there should be some things like together.
Yeah, it could be more open.
Yeah, but like you said, they have the class in France, The Art of Making Love. what would you include in your sex ed class for these young people?
I would just say like more education. Like we're taught about like the physical aspects of like this is your vagina and then you bleed and this is how you put a tampon in. Like that was my sex ed class. And then like here's some pictures of some STDs. The reason I picked the
and everyone's like, ah.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, I don't want
close
those.
the book.
Yeah, no thanks. That's why I actually thought of like the word jizz for that video because I remember precisely the moment when I learned that word. It was like my 8th grade sex ed class, and we had to do like a crossword puzzle or something with like as many like slang terms for like sexual things as we could come up with. And this one girl in my class just knew everything, and I was like, "You go." So she was just like writing down words, and she was like, "Jizz," and we were all like, "What's that?" And she's like, "Come, like you idiots." And so I remember like that moment where I was like, "Wow, I don't know anything." Like, it just like hit me.
What the fuck?
I was like, oh my God.
Like, come, like, I don't know. What the fuck?
Yeah, so it hit me and I was like, wow, I know nothing. So I think like outside of like the physical aspects of like, here's a dick and here's a vagina, like what else is going on in my system? Like to have known at the time, like when to expect my mood to be different or like it's going to be, your hormone levels are changing. So like if I had known when to expect like mood swings or like what to expect like physically, am I going to have acne? Like things like that. That was like, we missed that.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah, I don't remember it. But also, like, I think it probably needs to be an ongoing, like, thing from even a younger age. I don't know. Like, it is weird. Like, when do you start talking about sex with kids? Because then it's like...
Well, happy 5th birthday. Let's talk about sex.
Yeah,
like,
let's talk about the birds and the bees. Like, why the fuck is it called birds and the bees anyway? It's, like, so random. But yeah, like, I definitely think... it's lacking for sure. Yeah. And even just like health class in general in like public school is like pretty, I mean, I don't want to shit on people that are trying to make it good,
right,
but
absolutely.
It's like, you know, I think it's lacking a lot.
Yeah.
And there's probably a lot of things that I don't remember anything from chemistry, but if I had an extra semester of health class, I probably would have like benefited from that more than, you know, an extra semester of whatever else. You know what I mean? Like the things that are more beneficial, we tend to like kind of, oh yeah, actually, yeah, you used to have to take like 3 credits of art, now you only have to take like 1 or whatever, and we're just like cramming all this memorization down people's throats instead of like wanting them to actually learn about themselves or be creative or whatever.
Well, I've always said that like high school needs like a 4-year course of like life skills, like how to file your taxes, like how to buy a house, like all these things that you don't know how to do. Like hopefully your parents know how to do it, and if they don't, like I guess Google, like there's no one teaching you that stuff. Yeah,
and even with sex stuff, like, you know, you're kind of expecting your parents to kind of like teach you, but what parent wants to like explain that to their kid?
So true.
Especially when they're like not wanting them to have sex, but they're also like explaining it and all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of funny because kind of what we were talking about when you're talking about any type of like prohibition, when you're telling people to just specifically not do something, the only thing that they're gonna like want to do is do it.
It's the only thing a teenage boy wants to do anyways, let's be honest.
Yeah.
So now you tell them they can't, and they're like, yes, that's what we're gonna do right now, today.
Yeah, it is kind of weird because like we know how it works in anything else in our lives if someone tells us not to do something. I think the most balanced way is to just like educate and then like tell them what's up, you know what I mean? And also another thing that like people don't really think about that much is like the fact that we're not just telling you not to have sex because we don't want you to have fun, but it's like trying to make you not get pregnant, right? Because that's gonna fuck up your life more than anything.
Yeah, it can be really difficult.
Yeah. What's your opinion on like a lot of times when we're talking about like birth control and any type of birth control, the main thing that comes to mind is like actual like the birth control pill and then like condoms, like, you know what I mean? Like those are like the 2 main things. But I noticed earlier, I think it was even like yesterday, you were posting about IUDs. Yeah. I have a friend who just got an IUD. Explain like kind of what that is and like, because I never even like knew what it was. I bet girls probably know, but like a lot of guys probably don't even know that that's a thing. Yeah,
so there's 2 versions of the IUD. There's a hormonal IUD and then there's a copper IUD. So what I talked about was the copper IUD because it's non-hormonal. So it basically just like...
That's what my friend got.
Yeah, just like inserts inside of you and it creates an inflammatory response so that semen can't live. So you might have seen this in my YouTube video, but like cum can live inside of you for like up to 5 days. So, or the sperm itself can. So like that's a long time. And that's why it's like, you can only get pregnant 1 day out of the month, but like it can live up there for 5 days. So if the timing's right, like you can have a baby. So it creates like an inflammatory response with the copper and it causes inflammation, the sperm can't live, and so it's an alternative. There are some issues with it around like the fact that it is like creating inflammation.
And
in
it's
your
just
body.
like in a foreign object in your body for like years.
Yeah. So
that was the thing that freaked me out when I heard
like
about
having
it.
something inside of me all the time.
I freaked out about it like rusting or something. Like yeah, that would suck.
Just like having something inside. So like that definitely like stresses me out. For some women it works great. For other women it's just like not a good fit.
Literally?
So I'd say it's a good, literally. So I'd say it's like a good option for some. But there's so many other, and I think that's part of the problem is like we're not educated on like other non-hormonal options. Because it's like, birth control, like hormonal birth control, it's the only option. Or don't have sex. Like there's no in between that we're taught.
Yeah, that makes sense. So with the internal IUD, do you recommend it for people? Like the non-hormonal one?
It depends on like someone's body. I think like if someone's prone to like yeast infections or like bacterial vaginosis or like a disruption in the vaginal microbiome, if something like that's happening, then like you probably shouldn't insert like a foreign
Another
object.
thing.
Yeah, like let's not put that in there because that can disrupt everything else and continue to have issues. Or for women that like struggle with inflammation, that can be like you're just adding to it. But for some women it's great and it's a good fit. And it's like you don't have to go through a detox process when you just come off of it, you know, and you can still go through your normal cycle. So you still have a period and like you still ovulate, like all of that still happens.
Interesting. Yeah, when my friend was telling me about it, actually it was Kat, she was on episode 117, and she wouldn't care if anyone knows she has one, but yeah. What's up, everybody?
You're like thinking about that, like
I'm like I just said something kind of private, but I'm like, nah. She was literally talking about fucking going to a BDSM dungeon in our episode, so I think she's good.
This would be the thing.
Yeah, it's like
this is crossing the line.
Yeah. I told you about fucking tying me up and whipping me and shit, but I didn't want anyone to know about my copper IUD, goddammit. But anyways, okay, so now you're actually coaching women and everything. So in your own practice, what's like the main concerns that people have, or like myths that you're always dispelling, things like that? Like, just give us some of that stuff, because I feel like a lot of people out there probably have the same questions and the same concerns and everything.
Yeah, I would say the biggest one is like that the impression that I told you this, like their periods are supposed to be painful. When I say like your period is supposed to be like symptomless, like you should be tired. That makes sense. But like everything else are like, what? Like I said, they either get mad or like defensive. Like, well, you don't get my period, and it's like, well, we're all a little different, but they all kind of work similarly.
So when they're painful, it's because your hormones are too out of balance.
Yes. Yeah. So which, like, even going back to like the root cause, it's like, what are you doing in your day-to-day life that's like causing the hormonal imbalance that's causing the painful periods? So it's a multi-step process. I get that one a lot. I get acne a lot, which I get because like that's part of my story, so people relate to that. And digestive issues, actually, surprisingly.
Yeah, and you're like really into like gut health kind of stuff and everything like that, which I feel like is a pretty not new topic. Like it's been, you know, people have known about it, but I feel like in the past like 3-4 years, people have been talking about it a lot. So for people that don't know what that is, like gut, like that sounds like a fake word. Like that sounds like cum. That sounds like jizz. Like what the fuck is gut health? Like am I talking about my fucking like belly?
Is this it?
Yeah, like what's up with that? So for people that don't know, what is gut health, and like how do you regulate it?
Yeah, so basically your digestive system runs from like your mouth to your butthole. So like that whole system. So
News to me. Fuck.
Right. So like your digestion actually like, starts in your mouth. So that whole thing like is considered like your gut health sort of. And so throughout that entire digestive tract, there are like hundreds of thousands of bajillions of microorganisms that live there, and like ideally a healthy harmony and balance. So like you have good viruses, bad viruses, and like good bacteria, bad bacteria, yeast, and like everything lives great. Then you could do things with like lifestyle, such as like stress, not getting enough sleep, like overworking out or not working out enough, like things like that affect the balance, because like your body's going to adjust to what you're doing. And so when that gets out of whack or like out of balance, then that can cause like inflammation or like leaky gut. I'm sure you hear like a lot about that on social media and stuff. So, you know, these illnesses or these diseases pop up over time because they haven't taken care of like the bacterial balance.
So when you have leaky gut, what does that mean for people? Like,
So,
you're like how do you even like diagnose it?
I wish I had a visual, because this is like my favorite visual. But like if you put your hands together and like they're meeting in the middle, like that's how your gut should be. It should be like very tightly like bound. But as like things wear on the gut and stress and inflammation, like literally like the lining of the gut starts to like come apart a little bit and things can seep into the bloodstream. So like you have foreign objects in your bloodstream, it's immediately going to cause like a reaction. Your body's like, we're not supposed to have spinach in the bloodstream. What's this? Like, this isn't spinach. This is a foreign invader. And so your body starts to react to it.
So when you have leaky gut, what are things, like I know you can like take like probiotics and things like that. Is that like pretty much what you would be prescribing to people? Or not prescribing, but whatever, recommending, whatever.
So actually probiotics are like one of like the last things on my list. Ideally, like first thing I look at is like stress and sleep. Those are your biggest things. We have to we have to sleep and we have to manage our stress levels. Because nothing else can run if we are stressed out. So when we're stressed and our cortisol, our stress hormone is heightened, everything else but like the non-essential, all of the non-essential organs shut down basically. Like they go, like they're gonna hibernate because your body doesn't know the difference if like you got cut off in traffic or you're running from a tiger. Like it just thinks you're stressed. So like we need our heart to work, we need like, that's about it. Like our brain to work, like that kind of thing.
We need our heart to work and that's it.
That's it. Like we're good.
As long as it's beating, we're good.
We're good. And
the brain's off, but the heart's on.
But we don't need to have a baby. So like our periods don't have to work. Like our digestion doesn't have to work. We're not digesting food right now. We're like running for our lives. Like that's what your body thinks. So if like your stress and your sleep, which also affects your stress, is out of whack, like it doesn't matter what else you're doing. So that is like the number one thing. Like my first like week or two working with clients, like we address that, like mindset, stress, emotional health, like those things, because it doesn't matter how good you're eating or like how much you're working out. If you're only sleeping like 3.5 hours a night, like you're still gonna feel like shit.
Yeah. Would you classify that? I mean, I guess stress and sleep and stuff, it's kind of all under like the umbrella of like mental health and stuff like that too. And I feel like that's another big issue that has been coming up. It's almost to the point where it's overused. Like people are like, I just need to take a day for mental health, blah, blah, blah. It's like, dude, just like we usually just call that relaxing, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Like taking a mental health day. It's like, all right, whatever. But people are saying that a lot. But for you, when you have a client that is dealing from, I mean, it is a very real thing. I'm not making light of it, but it is like a very real thing. When you have a client, you have that like assessment and all that. What are things that people can do realistically to lower their stress levels? Because like you said, it's like your body doesn't really know what it's dealing with. So is it mainly work related or like relationship related? What's the typical thing?
I would say it's like a combination of a couple different things. Like it could be, you know, everyone's stressors are going to be different, and like everyone's like stress and everyone's trauma can look a little bit different. So like whatever, it could be like past emotional traumas that are like coming up that are stressing you out, or it can be like current stress, like bad relationship, finances, work, like, you know, it can be anything like that. Like a lack of a social like friend group or lack of a community. That's a huge one for a lot of people, especially like post-grad life. Like you move to a new city and they're like, where are my friends? And like that lack of community can be really difficult. So there was actually a study done. There was a city basically outside of New York, and this was a couple. I learned about this in my training program, my health coaching program.
Go, shout out again.
Yeah, there we go.
Sponsored of this podcast.
So it was like an Italian community, and they ate like shit, like shit in quotation.
Pasta and
whatever, like they ate pasta and cheese and olive oil and wine, and like, but they had amazing health. They like had really long like lifespans, and their like heart health was great, and they like couldn't figure out why. And then over time, like they were, you know, studying this community because they were like so healthy, and it's like, oh my god, how? Like
their longevity was super long.
They're not eating greens, and they're not doing the things that we classify as health. And then over time, like it decreased, like their health decreased. And then it got better. So what they found is that the community affected it. So like when it was decreasing, the community had split up. Like people's kids had moved away and that sort of thing. But when they were all together, that their heart health and their like physical health was so much better. So community plays a huge role in your overall health. Like having people around you is really beneficial. It is kind of
crazy. You don't think about like having like even just like physical touch or like whatever as like a thing that you like need as a human.
We require that, yeah.
Yeah, that's why like when animals, you know, and you like find like an abandoned pet or something like that, like they like literally need you to like love on them and touch them. Yeah.
It's my cats now. They get touched every day and they're like, touch me now.
Touch me, bitch.
That's my cats.
Yeah. No, but it's true. Like and actually I reference Richard a lot in the podcast, but Richard, one of the things that we were at this event for spinal cord injury people, and one of the organizers was telling him how they've done studies on the fact that people that you know are wheelchair users and stuff like that, they their life expectancy like goes up a crazy amount if they feel like they're part of a community of people that understand them and everything.
Yeah.
So like it's kind of crazy, you know, cultivating something like that, like cultivating communities and everything can actually lead to like living longer.
Right.
Which you don't think about. You're like, oh, I'm trying to avoid cancer and like not drink, you know, soda and eat greens. But it's like if you're lonely as shit, you're probably like not living a very happy life either.
I'm gonna sleep 3 hours and have 0 friends. It's like, well, it doesn't matter how much, like how good you're eating. I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or you can eat like shit and have an awesome, happy lifestyle and have a lot of friends and whatever.
There is. It's overused, but like balance. Like that word is key.
Yes. Yeah, one of my favorite quotes is moderation. Everything in moderation, including moderation. So it's like, so you know, do everything in balance, but sometimes go overboard for fun.
Right, exactly. You have to have fun.
Yeah, exactly. You can't be a fun sucker.
Yeah.
What are some other things that people like ask you about on like Instagram and things like that? Like I know you've done some cool like Q&As and things like that. What are like some other common misconceptions that people have about like sex or things that like they grew up learning and then we found to not be true or things like that?
Yeah, so I think just the topic of sex overall, like as soon as I started talking about it, which has been like more recent, I started talking about it. It was like my DMs were like blowing up and I loved it because it was like people like, oh my God, thank you so much. Like people don't talk about this. So I think just like the understanding of like it is like an open conversation, or that it should be like with your partner, like with your partners or significant others or whatever, like that should be a conversation that you're having openly. Like the amount of girls that don't understand like that it's supposed to be like comfortable or like that you're supposed to enjoy it equally, like that is a big thing. Like understanding that it is 50-50, like that like blew my mind.
Yeah.
But also like I've been there. Like it's not like I haven't been in the situation like that where I was like, wow, glad he had a great time. Like,
right. Yeah, I feel like that's the common complaint.
Yeah, but I think guys also don't get that education as well.
Totally not.
It's like you're told like, hey, make her feel equal, and it's like, how the fuck do I do that?
Yeah, and it's like the main things you hear as a guy, it's like, yeah, find the G spot and you're good, bro. It's like right up in the like it's so funny,
so dumb.
Yeah, and like I remember like not even necessarily knowing like the importance of like the clitoris like in like sexual pleasure.
Right.
Like it like if you just watch like porn or you just like you think about it, you're like, oh, penis goes in vagina. That's it. Like all the like what I feel on the outside of my dick. Yeah, exactly. Like what I feel on the outside of my dick is like what she's feeling on the inside. Like it.
On average, it takes a woman 20 minutes to get close to orgasm. That's a long ass time. So like
definitely,
and that's not like that for men. So no wonder.
Is that including like foreplay and all that stuff?
Yeah, okay, all that, like any like kind of arousal, but like 20 minutes. That's a long ass time. Like to have sex with someone. That's why foreplay is so essential because like asking like somebody to fuck for 20 minutes is going to be a really long time.
Just continuing.
So yeah, just like keep fucking 20 minutes, keep it up.
High intensity interval training, no breaks. Let's go.
Exactly. So
pound it out.
That's why it's so important to have foreplay and to do all that stuff. But like it's like the lack of communication, like girl being able to ask for it and like a guy knowing what to do.
Yeah.
So that's what I like express to my clients the most. I'm like, expressing your needs is so like in everything, like in your relationship, but also like sexually, being like, I need this, like I need you to touch me here, I need you to kiss like here. Having those like demanding kind of like asking for those things.
It's not sexy to like, it doesn't feel sexy to like straight up just like, there are some instances where it's like, you're being more like dominating, whatever, like touch me here, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But it like just having like a normal conversation about it, it feels like not like, we're not in the mood, like we're not, it's like, but whatever. But it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it should be like a conversation, like, hey, what do you like? I like this, what do you like? And like being able to do that.
Oh shit, I didn't even know.
Right, and like that's such like an eye-opener.
I thought I was doing the right thing. It's like, nah, I hate it when you do that.
Right, I hate it.
Well, I hate it too, so I'm glad, let's not do it anymore.
Right, and like that's the conversations that we're supposed to be having.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so I think also a lot of people have this like fantasy version of sex where it's like supposed to be spontaneous and like it's never gonna be something that's like planned. Like it's like all right, I think more it would make sense like in a long-term relationship or whatever, like all right, tonight we're gonna have sex, like you're like planning it out, but it actually kind of makes like it's funny how we all like I think a lot of people view it as like this thing that is supposed to be just spur of the moment and like we don't talk about it any other time unless we're like in it, you know what I mean? Like
totally.
how do you think that we can like change that stigma in the like dating world and things like that? Because I think quite frankly, in today's day and age of like Me Too and all that stuff, guys are a little bit afraid to be like forward about a lot of this stuff, especially in like dating and stuff like that, because you're not sure exactly what you can do. So how do you think we can change it, and what can we do to make things better?
Yeah, I think it goes back to like that open communication of like girls being willing to talk about it and like guys being willing to listen to it. But also like guys being willing to talk about it. Like I had like a sexual experience one time where like I gave a guy feedback and he was like, fine, I'm never doing that again. And I was like, that is not the goal here. Like, this is not what I'm trying to get to.
I love that. Excuse me, that is not the goal of what we're doing right now.
Listen.
I don't know what you were thinking, but I'm trying to have a good time too.
Right, like you're not the only one who gets to enjoy this. So I think like guys being, like both parties being like willing to talk about it, but also being receptive to it. And like, it's not a personal, like somebody's personal preference is not like an offense to someone else. Like, hey, I like it a certain way. I don't care. Because what he said was like, well, no one else has ever complained about it. I don't give a fuck. Like, I don't care that no one else has ever complained about that.
Yeah.
I don't like that. And I think like being able to have those open communications, like, and it's awkward. It's never going to be easy. But something I was telling a client yesterday, she's like getting into a new relationship. And she was like, you know, like, I don't know what I want. Like, I don't know if this is like going to go somewhere, what's going to happen. And I was like, well, start communicating and like setting up your needs now. Like, set up the foundation for like, if you know, like whether you want something sexually or whether you expect something out of the relationship, whatever it is, like start being open about that now so that you don't get like 3 months in and you're like, hey, I'm just now going to tell you for the first time, like what I expect from you or like what I need as a partner or to feel loved or whatever. Like, expressing that then is going to be so, like, it's like late in the game. So you have to like set the ground up from like the beginning, even though it's awkward. What do you have to lose? You're just starting out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think a lot of people, like, I think a lot of it too is like they don't want to set up those like boundaries and rules right off the bat. Because like number one, like you don't want to feel like the one who's like being the mom of the situation. Like, all right, so when we finally do have sex, I want this to happen and this to happen and this to happen. And you're like, fuck, this bitch is high maintenance. Like, I am out. Like, you don't want to feel like that, but at the same time, you don't want it to be like, gets down to it and then it's just like not an enjoyable experience. So how do you ride that balance? Like, when do you bring it up and how and like, you know, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I was thinking about this last night. I was like, there's never a good time to like have like that kind of conversation, like have an awkward conversation. But I think if like both people are like mature and like willing to like talk about it, I mean like, hey, like this is something that's important to me. And I think expressing anything, like starting it with like, this is important to me. If the person's not a piece of shit, they're gonna listen. Like,
that's true. But it does take guts to like actually, you know, kind of put yourself out there.
Yeah, and like it doesn't have to be from the beginning. You have to be like, these are my preferences, 1 through 10. Read the list, take notes, like apply it. Like that doesn't have to be like that.
There will be a quiz.
But being like, you can start it with being like, hey, like this is important to me that we have open communication around that. How do you feel about that? And like throwing that out there. So like, you're new in the relationship, like maybe you don't want to like talk about all these things, but like letting them know, like setting the stage, this is going to be like a thing for us. I think that's like a really good way to like ease into it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think just a lot of people are not necessarily taking themselves like seriously in a relationship enough to like do it too, because there's like 2 different camps, right? There's the one of like casual dating where you're not really ready to like make a long-term commitment, and then there's also the camp of like, I want something real, like, come on. And typically the stereotype would be like, guys are like, I don't know what I want. And girls are like, I'm ready to lock this shit down. Let's make some babies. You know what I mean?
It's not true.
I know. It's not always true, but I'm just saying stereotype.
Yes.
Not all stereotypes are true. But I think also knowing like where you're at and being like completely honest to the other person is probably important too. Because if you're like, to be honest, like, I don't really know if I'm ready to get like locked down in something serious. Like, I'm kind of just trying to have fun. Like, do you think that's like a bad, like, you know, if a guy was totally honest about something like that, like, I feel like a lot of people would be like, yeah, well, if you're not serious, then like, I'm out. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's why some people don't even want to talk about it, because they're not, they don't know exactly what they want. Right.
But I think that was actually some of the advice I was giving someone yesterday, one of my clients, and she was like, you know, like, she's like, you know, we're filling this out. I don't know where this is going or like what we're feeling. And
what are we?
Yeah, well, I don't know what we are. And I was like, well, you have to say that. Like, that is something that I think is like requires consent. Like, hey, I don't know where I'm, like, we're going with this, and like, you have the option to not be a part of it. And I think that, like, having those open conversations over and over again, and if, like, enough people did that. And I always say, like, this comes back to the idea of, like, I think that a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people have, like, that person who teaches them, like, how to have sex, or, like, that person who teaches you how to be in a relationship. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Shout out to that person.
You guys are the shit.
But, like, I think everyone's got somebody like that. And so, you know, if more of us did that and, like, had those awkward conversations, it wouldn't be so, like...
uncommon or
right.
weird. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think also, like, people are kind of weirded out with, like, online dating stuff too, because, like, that's such a big thing right now. Like, I literally the other day, like, deleted, like, every dating app off my phone because I'm like, this shit, like, I can tell when I, like, start going on it more, it's not because I'm, like, wanting, like, a relationship, it's just because I'm, like, horny or something. Like, I'm literally just, like, I'm just, like, swiping, you know what I mean? But it's like, okay, that's not really the answer. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and also it's not necessarily taking me down a road that I ultimately like the final answer of, you know what I mean? But I just literally the other day, like, deleted all the dating apps off my phone because I'm like, this is eating my life away. Because I was just like, every boring moment I had, it's kind of like, you know, when you pop open Instagram and you start looking at stuff, like, you're just like scrolling. It's literally the same exact thing where you're just like swiping or whatever.
That's the one thing I don't miss is, like, the dating apps. That shit sucked.
Yeah, for sure. No, and I don't, like, I think that there's a time and place for dating apps and stuff like that, but, like, unfortunately, I still do think the best way to make a real connection is, like, in real life. Unfortunately, kind of sucks.
God, I hate having to meet people.
Technology
Talking
rules.
to people sucks.
But yeah, like, technology definitely plays a cool role, and, like, it has led to some amazing relationships. Like, I know some people that have gotten married from people they met on Tinder and shit. Like, it's cool, but it also can be, like, super... It can fuck you up, like, mentally. You know, if you're on it for, like, a long time and you're, you know, and then you start getting, like, all these things like, why don't people like me, blah, blah. And, like, I listen to this podcast. It's a podcast called Why'd You Push That Button? Mm-hmm. And it's these two ladies from The Verge, the website The Verge, and they talk all about the choices that technology forces us to make. So, like, why do you go on dating apps? Why do you share your Netflix password? Why do you do, like, all these weird little things that are, like, socially entwined that we're finally dealing with it? Like, why do you leave people on red? Why do you ghost people? Like, you know, all types of shit. Like, it's great. And one of the episodes is about dating apps, and they interviewed... I think it was the person who was, like, the CEO of Bumble or something like that, and they were talking about how, like, the deeper you swipe, like, the longer and longer and longer you go through this, like, list of cards, the like, from the get, we're trying to introduce you to people that are most likely to match with you based on who they've swiped on and how active they are. And a lot of these accounts that you're just, like, endlessly swiping on at the end, a lot of them, like, unfortunately have, like, deleted the app off their phone, but their account is still active or whatever. Or, like, they, you know, maybe they're even freaking, like, married and they don't even know that their Bumble account still exists or whatever. Like, so the more you swipe, the least likely you are to get a match. But what it feels like in your head is the more you're like, I'm swiping on all these people and no one's swiping back. What the fuck is wrong with me? Versus, like, looking at it as, like, what is, you know, okay, you know, maybe I should, like, chill on this app for a while and let some new peeps roll in rather than just, like, endlessly going until the deck is gone. Like, yeah, it's not healthy.
Yeah, it's a mess. Dating apps, that's, like, one thing, and I did that for a while. Obviously, I think we all, like, have to go through that at some point.
Yeah, probably. But props to the people who didn't.
Yeah, for real. People are like, oh my God, dating apps seem so fun. I missed that. And I'm like, what? No, you didn't. You missed nothing.
It's kind of fun in the beginning because it's almost like a game. You're like, oh, we both liked each other. It's a match.
I'm so hot. So many people have matched with me.
Oh my God. It seems like every guy swipe on.
Why does everyone love me? God, I don't have enough time for all these boys. Like, definitely go through that. But then it's like exhausting at the end.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think also we've opened Pandora's box on a lot of these things, and there's no way to really, like, get it back. Because, like, in theory, like, dating apps, really awesome idea. Like, makes a lot of sense. Same thing with, like, Instagram, Facebook. There's ways you can use it very positively. There's also ways that it can pretty much destroy your life, and, like, you know, you can get sucked into the comparison game and all this kind of stuff where you're still lonely, still unhappy, you're not fulfilled, and you have no personal connections or, like, real friends.
It goes back to, like, needing a community.
Yeah, totally.
Like, having a community is so important.
Yeah, so for guys out there, what advice do you have for them on, I guess, just like in the dating world and stuff like that, and like talk, like let's say you are in a new relationship and things like that. Like you said, you were talking with one of your clients who's a female, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And all of your clients are women. Yeah. You have like one guy.
No, just all girl. Wouldn't be of service to men. They'd be like, what's going on with my hormones? I'd be like, I don't know. Get your testosterone checked. That's my number one advice.
Yeah. But for your female client, like what advice would you give to her like partner that, or, you know, new relationship or whatever, to make, you know, to open those lines of communication as a guy? So I feel like there's a lot of pressure to like kind of lead the relationship as the guy.
I was gonna say exactly that. Like some women are going to be bold enough to have that like conversation by themselves, but a lot of women are going to like lead into like their partner to bring that up and like have that conversation. So I think like it kind of exactly what I said, being like, hey, like I would like this, like just like setting the stage. I would like this to be open communication. We don't have to talk about it right now, but like I'm letting you know this would be something that would be cool. This is important to me, whatever.
Yeah. That makes sense. Do you think that would, like you said, you probably want to do that before you even have sex? Like, or like, because it kind of like takes it out. It's like, you know.
You don't have to.
Yeah, I was like, like sometimes the first time is like spontaneous and whatever. It's like weird if you like discussed it like over freaking coffee or something, like, so tonight, like, you know.
So what do you do for work? And also, what are your sexual preferences? Like, no one's going to say that.
Yeah, it's kind of a little, kind of weird. But
I think like within like the first month, probably, if like you're continuing to date someone, even if it's like just for fun, I think it's okay to like want to like still talk about that openly. Again, like the sexual like encounter, like I said, I had sexual encounter. God, that sounds like a horror movie. Like, yeah,
it sounds like something
that's bad. That's me trying to be like politically correct here. Anyways, like what I was telling you about with like the guy who didn't want to take any constructive criticism, like that was not a relationship. Like it was just like a fun partner, and he was not open-minded. So I think that applies even to like no matter like what relation you're having with the person.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I want to ask you about this too, because I was listening to a podcast recently.
Okay.
This dude was talking about masturbation.
Okay.
He's talking about how, from a guy's perspective.
He's just jumping into it. I love it.
Yeah. A guy's perspective, he was talking about how like they're in like certain cultures, like in a lot of cultures, a lot of them are based around like discipline and stuff like that, and like not masturbating it's not only just like a discipline thing, but it also like your testosterone like increases in the days that you're not, and then like whenever you do, whenever you come in general, you like lose a lot of your like testosterone. And guys that are like always, you know, every day masturbating or multiple times a day or whatever it is, their testosterone is like automatically going to be like super low. And like for girls, I have no idea what the implications are of masturbation or whatever. Or, you know, but what are your like thoughts on all that stuff? Because like, should you be like, you know, doing it all the time? Should you do it whenever you feel like it? Like, what's your view on it?
So for women, that's one of my assignments I give like my clients that come to me for low sex drive. Is like I'm like masturbate more, and they're like, what do you mean? Like you should see the react, because I do all my calls on video call, and they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I masturbate more. And they're like, that's the last thing I want to do. And I'm like, that's what's going to get your sex drive up. You're going to get a surge of sex hormones every single time. And that is like the number one thing to get your sex hormones back up. And especially after birth control, like masturbate all you want. Get after it. DJ
it's
that
a nice
party.
Prescription.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like that's not the worst assignment I could give them.
No, definitely not.
But it is like for some people who are like, oh, I don't have any sex drive right now. And I'm like, what? That's
fun.
how you get it back.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think that's what I was saying. The difference of like men and women is like so drastic in terms of like our sex hormones and how they function.
Very interesting. Do you think that there's any downside of it? Because that was the interesting thing is like growing up like in like Christian, you know, upbringing, the idea of masturbation is like inherently linked to pornography, because it's like pornography can also have a very detrimental like just mindset, outlook, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
All that kind of stuff, especially because it's getting younger and younger. Like, you know, kids are looking at porn, and that becomes their sex ed.
It's so easily accessible.
Yeah, and like I don't necessarily know the right answer to that and stuff like that, because I think also like watching your first like porn is almost kind of like a part of like
It's a
coming
ritual.
of age almost. Like, you're like, whoa, boobs. Like, it's kind of like a thing. Like, I wouldn't, like, I look on those times in my life kind of like, oh, that's funny, like, But at the same time, it is like, it's forming young brains really early on to be like overly sexualizing and overly like objectifying, Again, growing up in like Christian households, so like masturbation is looked at as like, don't do it.
Yeah.
Because it's mainly attributed to like porn looking at, it's a sin or whatever. But like masturbation in general, is it like a sin or not or whatever, was always kind of a weird thing. Because like if you're just like doing it as an act and not like fantasizing about someone or lusting or like looking at porn or whatever.
Do no matter what.
Yeah, I know. It's like you can't.
I've
trained my brain so deeply that I can just purely enjoy the physical and not imagine a thing. I just think about nothing. I think about cucumbers or like it's just me and myself in here. No, but for like what are your like views on that, like at a young age and all that kind of stuff? Like I don't know. Like, do you have any opinions on it? Because I'm just always curious what people think.
I mean, I think for like women and girls, what I see is like that's something I encourage. Like I said, for like the sex drive thing, but also it helps us like get to know our own bodies.
Totally.
So like, how can you explain to a partner like what you like when you have no clue what you like? So I think that's like a huge part of it, is like exploring like, hey, this feels good, this does not feel good. Like things like that are really crucial to like having a healthy sex life. And I can't necessarily say that like applies to everyone. That's just like my general like perspective on it. But yeah, I mean, I do think that like it doesn't have to be linked to porn. And like, I'm not sure, that's something like I haven't formed an opinion on, is like I haven't looked enough into like the studies of how it affects the brain. And I know there's like some mixed information on that. So I don't feel like
they tried to do a study on men that had watched porn versus men that had never watched porn. And they couldn't do the study because they couldn't find any men that had never watched porn. They couldn't. Like, they literally could not. Like, they literally could not find a guy that hadn't watched porn. Which is kind of crazy to think about, but it, like, kind of makes sense. Because, like, it's like you said, it's so easily accessible and we're curious.
I like scroll through Twitter and I'm like, there's some boobs. All right, anyways, moving on. Like, especially with certain, because Twitter, you can, if you have it on, there's a certain mode you can have it on where it blocks, but, like, they pretty much just allow anything. Yeah,
like, you can see straight up porn.
I watched
a
documentary on like porn stars and how they became like porn stars.
What was it called? Is it the one that was like really big?
I don't know. It was a long time ago.
It was like a documentary, and it was like something about like being underage or something. Not underage. Sorry, it was like something about like I don't remember. Anyways,
it was like but it was like about that and like how it affects like their families and their partners and like how they like get into it and that kind of thing. And they were saying they can't use Instagram at all. Like they have to use Twitter because like Twitter is like the big driving social media source for like porn. Yeah, and it is very odd too. Yeah, it's very weird because I recently got into this rabbit hole of because I was listening to that podcast. It was with Joe Rogan. It was a dude named, it's this super like funny black dude. His name is Hotep Jesus, and he's like super like woke guy that's like talking about all kinds of crazy shit. But one of the things he talked about was he's like, man, you can't be blowing your loads all the time, man. You're losing your testosterone, man. You're gonna be you're wondering why you're bad with women. It's because your testosterone is too low because you're always masturbating all the time. And I started like looking into that stuff. I'm like, that's really interesting. Never really like thought about it in that regard. I always just thought about it in the terms of like porn's bad for your brain, but not necessarily like, like masturbating, the act of it was bad. So I was looking into like different things, and there's like a community on Reddit where they are like talking about how like there's some guys that are just so addicted to it that it like ruins their life. Yeah, like, I mean, definitely. It can be like an addiction because of like the dopamine release in the brain. You get addicted to that. Yeah. So, I think there is like a fine line with that, but like as with anything else, balance. Yeah. Makes sense. Okay, cool. We covered masturbation. Great, check. That one off the list. Can't wait to send this to my grandmother. She's gonna love it. That's what I was gonna ask you about. Like, how has coming out about all this stuff like impacted your personal life? Like, you said your mom is like super open. Your dad is not super open about some of this stuff. Like, have you gotten blowback from any like family members of like, you shouldn't be talking about this publicly? No.
That's cool.
I was leaving my house today and my grandmother had come by and she was like, we were talking about doing this today, and she was like, I see some of the things you post on Facebook. And she says, and I would have never talked about those things when I was a kid. And I was like, but that's why I do it. Like, that's why I'm talking about it. And she was like, we just had to figure it out on our own. And I was like, that's why I'm doing it. God. Because, like, I don't want, like, my kids are not going to have to figure it out on their own. And, like, I think left to our own devices, like, we have no clue what's going on.
Do you think because I remember there was like a Monty Python skit where it's like a sex ed class, and then the punchline basically, and this is back in the day, like this is in black and white, and I remember my friend showing me this as like, oh dude, watch this. But it was a Monty Python skit where there's like a sex ed class, I think it's Monty Python, but anyways, and you know what I'm talking about. And then the teachers like start having sex in front of the students to like show them like what it's like. Right. So you're gonna get on top of the woman, right? And you're gonna get your penis and it's gonna be erect and and like the teachers are just like talking about it like as it's like a thing. But it's like, do we need something like that to happen? Not necessarily like with teachers doing it.
I'm gonna say firm no on that.
Yeah, not with teachers, but I'm saying like, I honestly think like, it is, again, like porn becomes the sex educator for these kids because they just watch that.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we either have the two extremes. We either have the like totally dumbed down version where the kid's not going to learn anything. And then we have the porn version, which is totally objectifying and doesn't actually tell you how to have real or like healthy sex. So like, what is the thing?
The middle
you know what
ground?
I mean? What's the middle ground? Like, how do we do that?
I don't know. I think, part of it's like the conversations and like, I think educating kids on how to have those conversations. Like maybe they like we don't show them the porn, but we teach them how to like ask the questions. Right, they're gonna do it on their own. Some things you just got to figure out yourself.
Yeah.
But teaching them how to have those conversations of like kind of what we were talking about. Like how do you ask that? How do you like set the stage for a relationship or like anything? As
a parent, like you said, your mom was like super open. How do you think you can start that conversation with your kid so that they are comfortable with having those conversations? Because like for me, for example, I probably would have never brought up things like that to my dad, even though like my dad could have been like, he's probably said like, if you ever have any questions about any of this stuff, just, come to me and ask me or whatever. But it's like, I'm not going to freaking ask you. Like, it's weird or I'm embarrassed or whatever. How do you think you can kind of break the ice with some of that stuff as a parent?
Yeah, I think honestly, like it would just be an open topic like everything else. Like,
do you think you need to kind of bring it up first so that they...
I guess the way I picture it, and like I don't have kids, so I don't know yet. But I think ideally the way I picture it is if we, it just would be like, it wouldn't be like a censored topic. Like it would just be like we talk about everything else. What's going on in the news, what's going on the TV, also this is what's going on with your body. Like that would just be open to me. So I think like that's how I picture like my household being. That's kind of how it was when I grew up, where it wasn't like, we didn't have like the talk. It just was like,
an ongoing talk.
Knew. Yeah, we just kind of knew about it. Also having older brothers, like there was no hiding it from me, because my brother was like gonna cuss or talk about sex, and like he's 6 years older than me, so like that was gonna happen whether my mom wanted it to or not.
Yeah.
But I think just having that like ongoing, like this is a topic, especially if like this is what I'm doing for work, my kids are gonna have to know that.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. Yeah, because I think about parenting a lot actually, which is kind of interesting. Like it's weird how like my brain goes there a lot, but I think it's it's probably just like primal, like it's something like deep embedded in you to like think about parenting, because your parents play such a big role in you, and you think about why you are the way you are because of your parenting, and then you're like, well, if I was a parent, I would do things this way or whatever. But yeah, I definitely think about parenting a lot, and that's something that I'm like still. I mean, I think a lot of parents don't know what the fuck they're doing. They're figuring it out as they go anyways, which is, as with a lot of subjects. But with certain things like that, I'm really trying to examine how I want to do things in my house, like especially when it comes to like even just like alcohol and drugs, because it's like, in my family, it's kind of like the same thing with abstinence. It's like, you just don't do it. And it's like there was no ever like education about it or anything. So the one thing you want to do as soon as someone's got some weed at a party or something, you're
give me the weed.
Like, dude, I've always been curious, man. I want to try it. Or so like, I would be more open about, I think I would probably be more open about it and like tell them like, yeah, it's like fun. It's not like the best thing. It's not like magical. Like it's not gonna like, nothing crazy is gonna happen. I wouldn't recommend it, but like, sure. Because like I think if you just give that like hardline no or hardline yes, it's like, if you kind of just say like, yeah, it's like this, you can do it, if you do, like, let me know, because I want to, like, you know, I want to make sure you're safe, but, like, if you don't, it's whatever. I feel like that would just confuse the fuck out of the kid, and they would be like, wait, so am I supposed to do it or not? Like, I don't, like, and then they're rather than just being like, dude, I gotta try this shit because it's something that my mom doesn't want me to do.
Yeah.
You're kind of in the middle, and you're like confused almost.
My mom made us watch a documentary on drugs when I was like, this is so my mom, when I was like 11. Like, she sat my brother and I down, and so my brother's like 17, and so like it was appropriate for him, and it was probably like fine for me too. Like, and it was just like a documentary and like showing the brains and like how things change. So I think like even again, like at an early age, like it was just like a conversation. She was like, you can make that decision, but like this is what you like, being educated on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that was like continuously what she did, was like I was constantly educated. So like whether I wanted to have sex or not, like I knew like this is how I could get pregnant. This is like the consequences, so that was always talked about. And so it wasn't like we had one conversation. It was just like that might be a dinner topic.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was very open.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think a lot of parents are like embarrassed too to talk about it because they're like, I don't know. Because a lot of people, again, like aren't even that educated themselves. So
parents don't know sometimes.
Yeah, they don't know. Like same thing with like, you know, you go to the doctor with birth control. It's like, well, I was on birth control and like, you know, I turned out fine. And
you had kids. Like I had kids. Everyone's good.
Yeah, so you don't know the like long term effects and all that type of shit.
Yeah, this is actually, I was reading an article the other day birth control is like the longest uncontrolled study of drugs on women ever. Mm-hmm. Because like we don't really know, they haven't been around that long. Yeah. Like birth control substances haven't been, so we don't know like the long-term effects or how this affects like future generations. Yeah. Because it was just like, all right, this was created, now go. The original pill was created and they did a study on it on women in, I believe it was Puerto Rico. They're called the Puerto Rican pill trials. That's how. And they took like all these women who were living in like some tough situations, and like didn't want to have kids, and they gave them this pill, and it actually ended up killing a bunch of them. And they brought it back to the U.S., hid all the basically that had killed them, all the reactions under the rug, and were like, yeah, this pill did great. And all these doctors signed off on it. And then another doctor came along and was like, that's not actually what happened. Like, this is what happened. But the FDA had already approved it, and it was like already on the market. And so that's how like we got the original birth control pill, which was nuts. So like and it's like it's changed and morphed, and it's not the same like dosage that it was then and that sort of thing. But like we don't know the effects of it long term.
Yeah, well, I've heard it kind of talked about that birth control is kind of like it's basically like finally women have control over their bodies, and we can do things in society that we couldn't do before, and we always had to be worrying about this thing, and like now it's like this liberator and all this stuff, which, you know, I see the argument there for sure. Like it makes a lot of sense. Like it's something that I don't have to worry about. I don't have a period every month. I don't have to worry about like having kids, like as far as, you know, one eventually growing inside of me. And so I do understand I guess, like, reason behind the argument, but a lot of people, like, I think it was in that podcast I was listening to with Dr. Jolene, I can't remember, Brighton, that she was kind of talking about, like, it's not necessarily the case. Like, it's not always, like, a liberation thing.
I mean...
But as far as the social implication, do you think it's had a positive effect on our society, or do you think, like, that it's negative?
From, like, a health standpoint, no. Like solely from like the science of like the hormones, like I don't think for the most women like it's a good option. We're built with like a system that's supposed to be regular. So if we're taking care of it, like that's empowering enough. Like I'm taking care of my system and it's doing what it's supposed to do. Like to me, that's empowering. Like knowing what's going on and when. And so like, you know, we work on like an average 21 to 35 day cycle, and like there are ways to, based on like your temperature and like your cervical mucus, to know when you're ovulating. And if you know that, like that's way more empowering than like I have to take a pill and end up with symptoms potentially. So
I feel like it's a lot of the kind of like don't ask, don't tell sort of deal, where kind of like, you know, I think of like factory farming, for example. It's like, I don't want to see it, just like give me the meat. Like just like I don't want to see the videos. Like I know they're cruel to the animals. I don't give a fuck. Like just give me the chicken in the plastic and I'm gonna cook it. Like I don't want to think about it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the same sort of mentality.
Yeah.
And again, I keep referencing Mind Pump. They're awesome. But Sal
sponsor this episode.
Yeah, literally no. But Sal, on the episode that I did with them, he said that in the future, he thinks that we're going to have access to everything that we want. You know, we're going to have, you know, we can jump on an app and get sex whenever we want. We can, you know, jump on an app and we've got food whenever we want. We, you know, we can take some pill and we're losing fat and like, you know, all these things. But you've got everything you could possibly ever want, but you're still fucking sad because you don't have any discipline in your life and you don't have any community. You don't have, it's all like artificially, you know, on paper, it looks like this pipe dream. Take this pill and you know, that pesky period will be gone and you'll never have a period and you won't even be able to have babies.
That's what it was advertised with as originally. It's like a pill to get rid of your period for period problems. It wasn't originally birth control. That was just a side effect, is that it prevented pregnancy.
This little side effect, like your whole reproductive system like shuts down.
It doesn't work. So no big deal though. It's all good. So that was like what it originally was for. Because like during that time, like it was a very religious time. It was like in the 60s. And like it was not a good time to like take birth control pills.
Well, I think in the Catholic Church, they still view it as like a form of like almost like abortion or something. Like it's
not allowed.
Yeah, which is kind of hilarious.
Yes. It's separating God's will.
Yeah. What are your views on that kind of stuff right now? I know that's like a touchy subject. If you want to avoid it, we can. But like I've brought it up in a lot of different podcasts recently because I think it's a subject that we're talking about a lot, and I think people want there to just be a black and white answer, but there isn't.
In terms of the abortion?
Just in terms, just like in terms of a lot of things, like, you know, there's, you know, it's easy to compartmentalize, like, abortion, bad, or abortion, good. And it's like, well, sometimes it's bad and sometimes it's like good, you know what I mean? Like sometimes it's necessary, and then sometimes it's like, you know what I mean? Like the, like, really late ones, like, not cool or whatever, but like, you know, what is your opinion on like what's going on?
Yeah, so I try not to get political on like any of my social media stuff or anything like that, because obviously like everyone's entitled to their opinion. But this was something like I was very vocal about when like all the abortion stuff, especially being in Georgia, when all of that passed, because like I focus on women's health and this affects women's health. So I have lots of issues with it. So that's...
With the bill or with abortion?
With the bill. Yeah, let's be clear. With the bill. So specifically like being the Georgia one being like the 6-week thing, like most women don't even know they're pregnant until 6 weeks. Like your period can be late 1 month. That's like not a great... It could be late and everything could be fine, like for the most part. Like maybe you got stressed out, or like if you're on an antibiotic, like your period.
But basically, the law was that you can't have an abortion after 6 weeks, but most women don't even understand.
Yeah, so they're even pregnant at that point.
Yeah.
So I have issues with that because I think it comes down to like if you don't want an abortion, don't have one, but like don't affect someone else's decision on like how that might affect their life. And, you know, that comes back to the argument of, like, well, they can go into, like, they can go into adoption or, like, the foster care system. And it's like, wow, don't even get into, like, how fucked up that is.
Yeah, it's like, okay, if you're really going to advocate for that, like, you go adopt some foster kids.
Are you out there adopting children? Are you going to take this kid in?
Yeah. It's like, we got enough babies. It's kind of like the whole argument against, like, shelter dogs versus, like, breeding dogs. It's like, why are we literally breeding dogs when there's so many dogs without homes? It's like, well, some people want, you know, this specific dog or whatever. Right. Like, who am I to say what dog you want to adopt or whatever? Just don't buy one. Right. Yeah, exactly. But I, you know, the same thing can kind of be said about humans. I think the main argument, it typically, I think it's from a lot of religious stuff, but also it's because people have the view that you're murdering a baby, and at the end of the day, we shouldn't be allowed to kill babies. And they're also kind of like, well, if you didn't want to have a kid, then why'd you get cummed in? Why'd you, like, you know, like, why'd you, you know, and like literally, that's like kind of the thing. It's like, well, if you didn't want to have a kid in the first place, if you're not ready, then why are you letting strange men stick the penis in you? You know what I mean? Like that's literally like that's kind of the like underlying tone of it all. So what I mean, like, but at the end of the day, it's like no one's saying that. It's all a women's issue because at the end of the day, the baby grows in the woman's body. Like, it's not a men's issue because, like... But yeah, so keep going, though. You're kind of saying, like, you were very vocal on it about the 6-week thing.
Yeah, I just didn't like that. Like, I think, you know, it should be a healthcare right. I mean, that's just my opinion, and some people are going to disagree with that. But, like, I think that's a healthcare right because, like I said...
When do you think it's fucked up to, like, you know, if it's like, you know, it could be... If it's viable outside the womb, it's kind of like...
I think that is between a woman and her doctor.
Yeah.
That's where I stand on that.
Yeah.
Because like again, like I don't know the circumstances or like what that person's going through.
Again, it's always messy, yeah.
So it's hard for me to say like I could say like I don't even know what I would do in like a certain situation like that. Because you know like then you come down to situations of like it's a choice between mother and baby or like things like that. And so, like, that's a very personal
Do you think
thing.
that the man should have a say? Like, if the woman wants to have the abortion, the guy doesn't? Like, does he have a right to that? Because it's in your body, but he also, like, half made it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. I can't say, like, ideally, like, sure, it would be a nice mutual conversation that you're making together, but, like, not every relationship is like that.
Yeah, definitely not. Especially, I mean, again, the extreme case that's always brought up is in the case of rape. Like, if you're raped and you get pregnant, like, as an extremely unfortunate situation, obviously. Right. And, like, I don't think anyone is, wanting any of that to happen. Like, no one's, like, wishing that upon anybody. But, again, it is a small percentage of the abortions that do happen.
Right.
So it's, like, it's kind of an outlier.
Well, like, women aren't, like, out getting abortions for fun all willy-nilly. Like, I think I'm going to go get an abortion today. Happy Saturday, guys.
Yeah.
Like, that's... If anyone's emotionally connected to this, it's the woman. Like, way more than the man is ever going to be. So, like, it's happening in your body. It's, like, affecting your system. So I think at the end of the day, like, that is her decision. And, like, if she wants to include her partner in it, that's her choice. But, she's going to be way more emotionally connected than anyone else is ever going to be. And, like, she's going to know whether it's, like, a safe situation. Like, your motherly instinct is going to kick in there and be like, this is... She doesn't want to do it for fun. She's not out there. Like, that's going to be the hardest decision anyone's ever going to make.
Yeah, and it's totally life-changing. Yeah, right. That's the main thing that I think that I can really get behind is the idea that if you're not ready to bring a kid into the world, like, we should not be forcing anybody.
Right.
On the same flip side of the token, if you're, really not ready to have a kid and you're out having unprotected sex all the time, making babies in you all the time, like, that's probably not the best idea either.
Definitely are, like, there are birth control options that don't have to affect your hormones, but also you don't have to have a kid.
Yeah, exactly.
There's that in between.
Yeah, I heard an interesting argument, too, about, I think it was on Sam Harris's podcast, where this guy, he was like it's like anti-natalism or something like that, where you basically, his premise is like, it's fucked up to have a kid because kids didn't ask for this and life is hard. Like, basically that's his whole premise, is like, life is hard. From the moment you're born, life is hard, and no one asked for this, and you have to work, and you have to, like, just to stay fucking alive, you've got to, like, work, and your body's gonna break down, and eventually you're gonna die, which sucks. Like, so basically, inherently, life is fucked up to, like, he's like, I'd rather be not ever born than be here, because if I was never born, I would never know, and I would be nothing.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of that idea of, like, when in that baby's life cycle, and in his, I think he even made the argument that it would be okay to, like, again, this is not my views. This guy was saying, like, it might be, okay for you to kill a baby even after it was born, which is, like, seems really weird.
I feel like that at that point is like.
But it's also kind of like the factory farm thing, where it's kind of like, it's a subject we don't like to say or talk about, like, that we're, like, killing these animals and keeping them in, like, captivity and being really cruel to them and then eventually eating them. But it's kind of like the same thing with, like, abortion in some ways, because, like, if it's inside the body still, it's, like, fine, because it's, like, it hasn't come out yet. But then as soon as it comes out, we're like, fuck, now I see it. You know what I mean?
I was going to say, but also it's like the...
No one's arguing for the external abortions. I'm just saying in that extreme example.
Laying out line, no one's calling.
Yeah, again, these are not my thoughts, but again, let's take it to the extreme. Let's take this thought experiment all the way to the next level. It's kind of like, what's the difference between 1 or 2 days out the womb versus, those... whatever. What is the difference? What is the real difference?
Again, I don't think, like, anyone's, like, choosing to have abortions, like, late in the game. You know what I mean? No one's like, I carried it for 7 months and I just decided,
that's
like,
true.
I'm not going to do it. Like, no one's choosing that. So if that's happening, it's happening for, like, a very extreme reason. And if someone is choosing that, like, she's going to have I would argue probably a good reason for that. So that would be my perspective on it. It's like, no woman is, like, ideally, like, she's like, I think, like, my life plan is, like, I'm gonna get an abortion and then I'm gonna, like that's not there.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and again, I'm playing devil's advocate on a lot of this stuff too. And also, I think it's healthy to have, like, try to take thought experiments down the full road, take it to the extreme, because that's eventually where it's gonna go. Because as soon as you give people an inch, they're gonna take a mile, right? Yeah. Same thing with a lot of different laws. It's like, you have to, we're not necessarily making this for the exception, we're making for the rule or whatever. I don't know if I said that the right way, but you get what I'm saying. Yeah. It's like, if you give people a certain thing, there's no way we can believe that people aren't going to take advantage of a situation. You know what I mean? Like, if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile sort of deal. So anyways, I just thought that was an interesting subject, is even though it's not fun. But I brought it up in a lot of different podcasts recently because I think a lot of people don't want to talk about it because, again, it's like very politically charged. But at the end of the day, it's not really a political issue. It's more of like a health thing.
Yeah, it's like a public health issue. Yeah,
exactly. When you talk about like abortion and stuff like that too, people also want to talk about like what's it called when you get leave from your job after you have a kid and stuff like that? What's that called again?
Maternity leave.
Yeah, maternity leave. What do you think, like, in society, do you think, like, if Calee ran the world and Calee could, reform sex ed.
Calee does not want that job.
No, but if you could just like implement your ideas and then you're out. Like you're in a perfect world, like what would it, well, obviously it's like, if it's a fairy tale world, everyone has all the money they need and no one has to work, like, but in reality, like what does that look like for people and things like that? Because I know that's another issue that people are, talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think Denmark does it well. Here I am going back to Europe.
Europe?
They get like months of maternity leave and maternity and paternity leave.
They join a maternity league.
The maternity league.
They play a game.
Yeah, it's basketball, guys. So
last one in, last one staying in.
Moms and dads both get
maternity and paternity leave. Yeah.
And I think that's a great system. It obviously works for them, and I think and when it comes to like reforming things, it's looking at like what are other people doing well and what are other people doing poorly. And I think it's something like we do poorly. I had a friend that had to go back to work like 8 weeks after having a baby, and she worked from home, but like she had a newborn at home, and she was like, what the fuck? Like, how am I supposed to do all of this? And she like, was getting interrupted on like conference calls and things like that because like she had a newborn, but then they understand that. So it's just like this very weird, like, someone's having a kid, like why are they having to choose between their job and their kid? But I also know that some jobs, like, you're required to be like working, like some jobs like require you in the office and like being hands-on and things like that. So again, I think it comes back to like that has to do with like the mother and like her choice and what she wants to do in terms of like working and taking care of her kid. But I definitely think like we could have better childcare systems and like the maternity leave could be different. Ideally, yeah, it'd be better. Especially with like that first year a kid's like attachment style is building. So like psychologically we have different kinds of attachment styles. And so like it needs to be held all the time and like comforted and coddled. Like that's what a baby needs. It can't do anything for itself. So thinking of like a psychological perspective of how the baby's going to develop, the mother needs to be there. Somebody needs to be there, like servicing those needs. Do
you think it's important for it to be the mother, or could it be like a nanny or someone like that?
I don't think it has to be the mother. I mean, the child's ultimately going to have a better connection with the mother, like just like scientifically speaking. But I think it could be like somebody who takes care of the baby. But then that goes back to like what are our childcare systems like?
Yeah. Which I think that's an interesting one. Yeah, I never thought about it before, but maybe like, companies could like have some sort of privatized like childcare or something like that. I don't think making childcare public would make a lot of sense. No. That'd be really bad if the government was involved in that shit. We've already got bad enough with public school, but maybe like businesses should be like, I hate to make like requirement things, but it would be nice if businesses like gave you extra money for like childcare or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know, just an idea. I always like to ask like social type of questions to people who I think have a good open viewpoint on a lot of different things, because I feel like you probably have good opinions on them.
Thanks.
Because I think a lot of people, they're so worried about their own life. They don't have time to like think about all these like social issues and all that kind of stuff, and how they're like, the world's fucked up. How do we fix it? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of times people like you have like good ideas of how we can implement new things.
Thanks. I think it's a mess, but...
Yeah, it definitely is. The world's a mess, but I think we'll figure it out. I think we've got this. Calee, this is awesome. Do you have any other like final closing things for people to hear, or anything that you need people to know, and also plug all your social medias and stuff like that?
I think we covered like every topic I could imagine. So I appreciate it. Thank you for having me today. And then you can find me at Calee Shea on everything: YouTube, Twitter,
it's pretty
Instagram.
Unique name.
Yeah.
Do you know any other Calees that spell it like you?
No, I like look on Instagram sometimes. I'm like, are there any other ones? But there's a couple.
Does someone own just at Calee?
No, I haven't seen that one.
Really?
Yeah.
You should steal it.
I know, I should take that. No one take it. I'm gonna go take it right now.
Awesome.
for ransom.
And if people want to work with you, go to your website.
Yeah, go to my website. There's a page under services. It says one-on-one, and then you kind of read about like my philosophy, and then there's a form at the bottom to fill out and book a call.
There we go.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, Calee, thanks for being on the show,
you.
and see you later, everybody. Boom. There you have it, guys. Thanks again to Calee for joining me. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you check out her YouTube channel and her Instagram. There's lots of awesome stuff there. And also, I think you'd really enjoy going back and listening to episode 117 with my friend Katia Sarmiento. During that episode, we talked all about her polyamorous relationship, her experience in a BDSM dungeon, her relationship with her primary boyfriend, and overcoming her insecurities. And that was an awesome episode. Go check it out. That was episode 117 with Katia Sarmiento. Also, if you're into the woo-woo type of shit that we were talking about earlier, I think you'd really enjoy episode 78 with Jessica Valor. She's a psychic medium, intuitive soul coach, and a quantum healer. And I don't know what the fuck that means, but during our conversation, we talked about her near-death experience, her views on psychedelic drugs, and what she thinks happens when we're born, or before we're born, and after we die, and all kinds of other fun stuff. Go check it out. That was episode 78 with Jessica Valor. If you want to support the show, best way to do that is to take a screenshot on the device you're listening to right now, on the device, with the device. Take a screenshot, put it on Instagram stories, put it on Facebook, share the show with your friends. The best way for the show to grow is through word of mouth. If you feel like being awesome, also, if you want to go to Apple Podcasts and leave me a 5-star rating and review, that would be sick too. And if you want to follow me on social media, you can go to my website, andrewdeitsch.com, and you can find all my social media links there. But that's pretty much all I got. Thank you guys so much for listening, especially all you loyal peeps who listen every single week. I really appreciate you guys, and I will see you all next week. Touch me, bitch.